I don't know about you, but I do truly love a nice buttery flaky biscuit in the morning. So in this video we're going to make buttermilk, honey, and bacon biscuits. And since bacon makes everything better, of course we're going to start off by chopping it up. That way we can fry it up into tiny little pieces and incorporate it into our biscuits. So here I am, I'm going to throw it into a medium hot skillet and pretty much cook bacon any way that you guys would. But you do want to make sure you cook it nice and long to really render out all the fat. And by cooking it long enough, not only will you put a nice crisp on it, but you'll also render out most of the fat, which is pretty important because you don't want to add too much extra fat into the dough because it's already going to be loaded with a lot of butter. And now speaking about butter, what you want to do is you want to take your butter, the amounts are all in the description as always, and you want to throw it in the freezer because you want everything to be as cold as absolutely possible. This stuff, as you're seeing, I'm grating it here, and that's because the butter is straight out of the freezer. It's rock hard. And once I'm done grating it, I'm actually going to throw it back into the freezer while I combine all my dry ingredients. So here we're just going to add some flour, and then we're going to add some baking powder, some sugar, salt, and we're going to make sure we whisk all that together. And this is actually, a lot of people skip this step and just add the dry or the wet ingredients, but giving it a good initial whisk, make sure everything's well combined, is actually fairly important. And now we're going to take our butter that's straight out of the freezer and add it into our flour mixture. And like I said, you want everything to be as cold as possible because you don't want this butter to melt. The reason you don't want it to melt now is because as you make the dough, as you pull the dough together, you want that butter to be in chunks. That way, as it cooks, it'll puff up, and that's how you get a very flaky, puffy pastry. And now here we're going to add our chilled buttermilk. Again, you want it to be as cold as possible, everything to be as cold as possible. So I just took this right out of the fridge, and now buttermilk is going to add a very nice acidity to it. And because to counteract that acidity, I'm going to add a good amount of honey here, and honey is also just going to make it a lot better. And straight from the fridge, after draining it of all of its fat, I'm going to add in the bacon bits or the bacon pieces. And I'm going to make sure it all comes together fairly nicely. It's going to be a very dry mixture, but that's actually what you want. You don't want it to be too wet, because the drier it is, the flakier it'll be. And before you go and add too much liquid to this, because I know it does look dry now, just give it some time, let the dough hydrate. It does take time for the flour to hydrate itself. So generally what I'll do is I'll just wrap it up and let it sit in the fridge for 5-10 minutes. Just let everything hydrate and get nice and well combined. And straight from the fridge, it's going to stiffen up pretty nice, and this will actually help us in our next step, which is going to be laminating our dough. And the lamination process is pretty simple. It involves you cutting the dough into, here I cut it into four sections, stack those sections on top of each other, and then press it down. And by pressing it down, what you're doing is you're creating hundreds of little layers of dough and flour and dough and flour. And what these layers are going to do is, as you bake them, the butter that's fairly cold in the dough is going to expand, and that expansion is going to cause it to puff up. And this is what's really going to give us our flaky layers. And again, you don't want to be too gentle, but you don't want to be too rough. And if you do start to notice the dough getting a little warm, just wrap it up, throw it back in the fridge, and let it harden up. And I'll repeat this layering process about 2 or 3 more times. And now once out of the freezer, I'm going to roll it out. Now you want to roll it out and keep it fairly thick. I like to say about 1/2 inch thick, and then just cut it into whatever shapes you want. A lot of people do circles. I'm going to do squares here, and really whatever works for you. But you do want to cut it into fairly even sizes, that way it all cooks the same, because otherwise you'll get a small one that'll cook way quicker than a bigger one. And this recipe does make about 8 fairly large size biscuits, definitely enough to spread jelly on, butter on, whatever you want. And after I'm done cutting them all out, I'm going to place them on a parchment-lined baking dish, and I'm going to throw them in the oven, and of course the times and temperatures will be in the description as well. Now another additive I like to do, just to give a bit more sweetness, is I like to make a honey glaze that I like to brush over the top of it just as the biscuits are finishing baking. It adds another layer of sweetness, but it also makes them shiny and really glisten and just makes them prettier. So I like to mix the honey with the butter and just throw it in the microwave for like 30-second bursts until it's all melted well. And here they are coming out of the oven, and as you can see, they're really pale, but adding the honey glaze on top is going to make them shinier and just give them an overall better color. And I believe I did this with about 4 or 5 minutes left on the bake time. But as I pull them out, I'm going to let them cool off, brush over any excess that you have, and you can put jelly on it, put butter on it. They're awesome, they're sweet, they're savory, and really great for a breakfast. So thank you guys for watching once again. Like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, and you'll get more awesome videos like this. Peace.